Early in his writing life, Cormac McCarthy renovated a dairy barn as a living space, salvaging bricks from the boyhood home of fellow Knoxville writer James A.G. And by this time, A.G. had moved on from this plane of existence and most likely wouldn't mind the aspiring author putting the bricks from his childhood home to good use. Now, in building a new house from old stones, Cormac would mirror the ritual that would define his writing for the next 40 years. In his many works, if not all, he selectively dismantled and reconfigured great landmarks of literary art. Out of the shards, he would create something distinctively his own. The Orchard Keeper follows a boy and two old men who weave in and out of his young life. Set in the Tennessee Hill Country, the elusive narrative memorializes without a trace of sentimentality a vanishing way of life in the woods. An affection for coonhounds binds the fate of the characters, who wander unaware of any kinship. The boy never learns that a decomposing body he sees in the leafy pit just may be his father. The story, however, similar to William Faulkner's literary style concerning its themes, characters, language, and structure, was far from a mere simple imitation. As stated, McCarthy began the book while in college and dropped out in order to dedicate himself more fully to it. He continued writing it in Chicago, where he worked part-time in an auto parts warehouse. "I never had any doubts about my abilities," he would later say. "I knew I could write. I just had to figure out how to eat while doing this." After 3 years of writing, he shipped the manuscript to Random House, seeing as it was the only publisher he had heard of. Eventually, it reached the desk of legendary editor Albert Erskine, who was William Faulkner's last editor, as well as the sponsor for Under the Volcano by Malcolm Lowry and The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, the latter being the topic of episode 96 of House of Words. Erskine recognized Cormac as a writer of the same caliber as those he had collaborated with earlier in his career and would go on to edit McCarthy for the next 20 years. "There is a father-son feeling," Erskine would say, sheepishly adding that it felt this way despite the fact that they never managed to sell too many of his books. The Orchard Keeper was published on May 5, 1965. Despite winning the William Faulkner Foundation Award for Notable First Novel, it would not propel him into stardom, nor sell in many great numbers. In spite of the lack of sales, however, it did provide McCarthy with grants from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the William Faulkner Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Now, having the ability to live on very little, he made the money from these grants sustain him for years to come. Cormac never showed any interest in a steady job, a trait that seems to have annoyed both his ex-wives. "We lived in total poverty," his second ex-wife, Annie DeLissel, would once comment. For nearly 8 years, they lived in the reconstructed dairy barn outside Knoxville. "We were bathing in the lake," she added with some nostalgia. "Someone would call up and offer him $2,000 to come speak at a university about his books, and he would tell them that everything he had to say was there on the page, so we would eat beans for another week." He learned to survive on his own. He would cut his own hair. He ate his meals off a hot plate or at a cafeteria. He did his laundry at whatever laundromat was closest. For many of his first years, really decades, as a writer, he had no walls to hang anything on. Then, in 1981, at age 48, he heard the news that he was to receive the MacArthur Grant, also known as the Genius Grant. He was living in a motel in Knoxville, Tennessee at the time. Living from place to place, having no place to really call home, was the routine. That was the routine until 1982, when he bought a tiny whitewashed stone cottage behind a shopping center in El Paso, Texas. Well, in 1991, nearly a decade after buying this cottage, he told an interviewer that he wouldn't take him inside, seeing as renovations had stopped due to lack of funds. He claimed that it was barely habitable.